Well, hello, everybody. I hope you had a great weekend. It is Monday, and thank you for joining us here on the Daily Show, presented by who? Bowlers Network. And our sponsor, as always, who? Farmers Union Insurance. Thank you so much for being a part of growing the bowling community. Guys, I want you to get in here because I got a lot to talk about today. Jay, Zach, did you have a good weekend?
Hello, I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Had a great
Awesome. I
weekend.
love it. Okay, we're entering week three here, PBA Tour, US Open this week. But what a fantastic 2 weeks we have had. The very first thing I want to touch on before we get on to our educational subject matter is this. That left lane was key to the left-handers on that TV show. Key to whoever matched up. Matt Russo using two different balls. I even think a few of the other guys threw a couple balls here and there and definitely on the fill shot. Zach, what is your takeaway from left lane to right lane?
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much what it turned into because it was a bit of a score fest for the guys that were doing well. I mean, Graham Thaw, I think, averaged about 270 on that pair from match play to the step ladder. I think he missed 3 times in his 2 matches in shots that actually mattered outside of the 10th frame. So he was able to lock it in because he was throwing super early, super strong black hammer, where the other guys, a lot of them were trying to throw reactive through it. And the topography was just so weird down lane on that left lane that they couldn't really get anything to be consistent. So that's what it was to make or break a title when you've got your opponent shooting 240, 250 at you. You need to have both lanes figured out.
Well, I absolutely loved watching Tomas Larson be rock solid. I don't think he gave up the pocket. And what I want to say is his ball controlled the pocket the entire time. And when he actually tried to get the ball to go high flush, he four pinned or rang a 10 pin on the few shots that didn't carry. Now, Jay, that was your guy. You liked him from the very beginning when match play started. So what did you think about what he was doing on TV?
That was just bad luck, I think. And it was just his entry angle was off maybe just a half a degree or whatever it was that caused, his carry, to not quite be there. When you saw him, the hits that really seemed to carry best for him were his light hits, which is surprising, for a guy that's not a huge rev rate guy. But his light hits are what carried, and we called it from, before the week even started. What we said is, the guys that are going to do well are the guys that are going to control the pocket. Don't be surprised if it's guys that are going to go down the 5 board. And that's exactly the way it played out on both sides, left and right.
I thought it was great bowling by everyone. Another great show. The commentating is still new. I'm holding judgment because it's not an easy job. I thought it was very informative. One thing I did notice about Tomas, I thought his ball was a little bit too slow. I, I not his speed. I meant the shape.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm backing that up with what you said, Jay, is his light hits with that were much better than when he hit the pocket. So again, I would think if he had a couple more frames, he may have tried a different ball just to see what it would do. I know he did on his fill shot a couple times, but great bowling to everyone. So let me just look at my little sheet here, boys. Let me just check right now where we're all standing on
Oh,
player
great.
of the year and rookie of the year. Oh, stop rolling your eyes. Yes, I'm still in the lead. Um, we've got Brandon Bonta currently in second place. I'm going to go by just overall points, okay, on the PBA Tour. Brandon Bonta is second. Spencer is sixth. And CJ Petrin is 22nd. I am first. Jay is second. Zach is third.
It's
Okay, got a lot.
early.
It's
Yeah.
early.
It's
It's early. I get
early.
it. I get it.
Most of
I
those guys
get
didn't even
it.
make the US Open PTQ.
She's
Okay.
you get that,
Yes,
So,
just look.
Carolyn?
Okay. Now, player of the year. No surprise here. EJ Tackett is third. Marshall Kent, 53, off to a slow start. And Andrew Anderson is 11th. Um, and that's really just because I watched him bowl last week and I don't think he bowled that bad. So Zach, he's your guy. What held Andrew back last week? Just that little bit.
Oh, I mean, what we all saw was it was a lefty fest. I
Mhm.
mean, we had 4 lefties on the TV show. 8 of the 16 in match play at one point were all lefties. It was the left was the play this week, which happens on the PBA Tour. And
Sure.
Andrew just wasn't able to line up on that right side. A lot of the guys who were hooking it a bunch just had trouble pair to pair. So I want to go to the EJ and Thomas Larson match that was back in match play. Incredible match. If you have Bowl TV, go watch it in the archives. But what it was is EJ struggled the entire time, and he put up some miraculous scores with really bad ball reaction because it seemed like the further left you got, the worse the topography was noticeable. It was crazy. Where Thomas, for example, played directly up it, and his misses were those 4 pins, 10 pins, and he was getting a lot of light swishers, like Jay said. So a lot of the righties, because there was so much traffic over there, had to creep in, but the topography was so bad pair to pair, you couldn't really consistently get high scores. So I think a lot of the guys ran into that problem all week, including Andrew, who likes to hook it a little bit.
I agree with that 100%. Watching that match, it's so funny because, when EJ needs a hit, he's one of the guys you're going to pick to hit the 1-3. Like it's not like you go, well, gee, let me think if EJ Tackett's going to hit the head pin. Like it's not that type of bowler. And he did 210 more than I've seen him 210 in pressure situations. Again, not saying it doesn't happen, but I agree with you that I think topography did come into play. And pair to pair, I think the moves needed to be bigger. I also feel pair to pair, depending on who you were bowling, your moves might have even been a zone to the right, zone to the left. And we did see a little bit of that. We also saw the left-handers shifting to the right a little bit to move in away from when they had what they would call you get your hang down lane. If you get it too far left, it didn't come back. If you missed right, they had no hold. So I do think pair to pair was very difficult. And that brings me to our next subject. Let's just look at our dictionary here for a moment. Topography was key last week. I personally think topography is something that should be taken into consideration every single time on the pro tours. We know it is. World events, we know it is. Very hard in league, obviously. But again, a lane is not flat. So what actually is topography? If you look it up, topography is the study and mapping of the shape, elevation, and features of the Earth's surface. Is that true? I'm
Yeah.
joking. Come on, it kind of is. But in bowling, what does that basically tell you? That there are ups and downs and slopes and divots, and it's just like a golf course. It's just like the world. It is a place of unknown. We have a great topography map here. We're going to show you. I think, Josh, can we pull that up? And Zach, I'm going to start with you and then lead right on over to Jay. Tell us a little bit about what of course I go to say it and I can't remember the little cues on the bottom there
The
are
arrows and colors.
and arrows and colors that actually explain what are we looking at here.
Yeah, absolutely. So on a topography chart, these are from USBC themselves. When they are created, they showcase what slope the lane has. So is it sloping left to right or right to left? So the arrows are going to dictate what direction the lane is sloping. And then the stronger the color, the brighter the color, the more slope there is. So this is a very wonky one. This is from Baton Rouge last year at the USBC Open Championships. But what you're going to see, like on that left side of the chart, for example, is you're going to see a lot of yellow. So that's where a lot of balls have been thrown. So that causes a little bit of a trough to a certain degree of the lane. So when your ball hits that yellow, that red, it does want to hook earlier than if it hits the blue or the green.
And I think that's key. And Jay, I'm sorry, I just want to say right before you
No, that's
talk a
fine.
little bit about it, because you did bowl the Open Championships as well last year, correct?
Oh yeah, and I was
Yeah.
miserable.
I want to talk about the one color to me. It was miserable. You threw me off on that one. I want to talk about the one color that you mentioned, and we'll go over it again, but is the yellow. The yellow is basically what would you call traffic. Okay. That's got the most play. And you can see here on this pattern. My goodness, the left lane, lane 3, has it on the left, in the middle, and of course a little bit on the right, on the outside. But then lane 4 is much better on the right. So Jay, looking at this map, if you bowled on 3 and 4, I know you said you didn't have a good Open Championship. I think you're being too hard
I
on
bowled on the
yourself.
pair that was the
but
absolute worst. It wasn't me.
okay. And so
That's the
and what did
attitude.
you see? What did you see out there?
You know, I was in such a desperation. I don't remember. I just remember that my ball wasn't going to the pocket. No, but in all seriousness, in looking at topography, I think that is one thing that almost everybody either doesn't know about, and unfortunately, they just look at a lane pattern and assume then that it's going to play equally across the board. And whether you're a league player or you're going into a tournament, you know that certain, well, this lane in our house seems to always hook more than the other. And people assume that it's a bad pair, or they assume that it's something to do with the oil. It's not, it's the topography of it. Right. And I think you guys talked about it very well, that when you see the colors and you understand that if you have a red, right, and on the topography, yeah, you're going to have a pair that rolls radically different. In fact, the ones you had up, 3 and 4, I don't remember if those were the actual numbers of or the lane numbers. They are going to play radically different. The one on the right is going to hook, maybe again, dramatically different than the one on the left. Now, if you're a lefty up here, wow, you got a challenge in front of you.
I agree with you 100%. But again, every tournament we bowl, we don't get the topography of a bowling center. But what I do want to say, and I was joking earlier when I was talking about the world, because I thought it was a great way to introduce the fact of, the world's not flat either. So neither is the lane, but bowling lane topography refers to the non-flat 3-dimensional contour of a lane, including slopes, crowns, and depressions. That influences a bowl's path over 60 feet. The reason I wanted to say that, of course, is because yes, the oil is moving. We're throwing it different. We may change the speed just a little bit. There are so many variables in what we do with that bowling ball, that knowing as much information as possible, including topography, lane surface, will help you to make the best decisions possible. So I go back to you, Zach, by looking at the one we have. We're just using the map here, and knowing what the legend means. What type of ball, if you were left-handed, is there a specific ball or area you would start out at? Let's say you're left-handed first.
Oh boy. Ugh, man.
Okay, go right-handed. You want to go right-handed first?
Oh no, I'd love to be a lefty after this week in the PBA.
But you don't believe in lefties. You just said that.
Hold on.
That's
That was
not
never
true.
on record.
It's
Thank you
not
very
true.
much.
He just said, I don't believe in
He's-
lefties.
No,
I don't know what he's talking
no.
about, guys. He's making stuff up. It's crazy.
Exactly.
No, but if I would see this, the one good way to figure out differences in topography on a pair is more controllable, more consistent equipment. If you're throwing that super inconsistent, really quick skid snap type of bowling ball, generally your pearls, your shiny balls, whatever it may be, those are going to react to that topography similarly to how they can react when it sees dry boards, where it's going to be a more violent reaction. So to be able to tame the topography a little bit, you're going to want those more controllable pieces. Let's look at Grandpa on the TV show. We saw differences in lane to lane. That was from the topography, unless something crazy happened in warmups where one person only practiced on one lane, but that definitely didn't happen. But there was topography differences. What did Graham do? He used a black hammer. He used the most controllable bowling ball on the market, and that helped him succeed. That helped him pop off for 260s and 270s every time he was on that pair.
I agree with that as well. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Matt Russo threw 2 different balls. I believe one ball rolled a little bit earlier than the other ball, which gave him the best look in that first match or so. As he went on, it was a great choice. I mean, obviously, but again, with the breakdown and the transition, and again, people coming out with different surfaces than you had in practice, it truly does make a difference as to how you attack the lane. Now, again, not everywhere, that you go to bowl, everybody's going to have a map of their bowling center hanging up. I mean, that just doesn't happen. But my advice to anybody who bowls like the Open Championships, the Women's Championships, I know the Storm Utah Open, and I'm not sure if the Ong Open does, but I think they do have some topography readings and whatever to give you an idea of possibly, once the pattern's down, how the lanes may play. I don't know. Again, we talked about that middle of the road ball. My question, Jay, let's discuss a little bit. Zach mentioned it. Grandpa used a very controllable ball, right? It read front to back beautifully, I might add. Besides the fact he has a great game, he threw it great, looked very calm out there. Do you think this is something we're seeing? Is this something consistent we're seeing over the first 3 weeks on the PBA Tour?
I hope so. And I say that because I'm old school, and before we started the week, what we said is that the ones that can control the pocket and keep the ball in front are going to be the ones that come out in the end. And I think if you look back, and I didn't see the exact speeds that Graham was throwing, but in the beginning, when they were warming up, and I'm sure you guys caught this, did you see Matt, when the match against Matt Russo, Matt took a 500 or took a big solid ball, scuffed it down to 500 and threw down the line that Matt was on in warm up. I'm sorry, that Graham was on. Obviously, he's trying to play a little defense, a little gamesmanship there. And Graham kind of stuck with that, but I think he controlled that line by increasing his speed as he had to. He didn't get off that line. You only had one game to get through. And so going to your question, I think hopefully, but again, that's just because I'm old school.
No, I'm not going to say that's right or wrong. I mean, it's early in the season. It's only the third tournament. The
I
U.S.
just like
Open,
to watch it.
I do too. And you know what? The U.S. Open, my goodness, it could be a flip of the coin, right? We've seen high scores one day, lower scores the next day, of course, different patterns. I think it's going to be very interesting this year. I do. I think it's going to be very interesting. Let's go back to what we would use. Zach, we talked a little bit about on this topography. You were talking about if we were on the left. On the right, if I were bowling on lane 4, which if we could pop that up just one more time. If I were bowling on lane 4, I can guarantee you I would probably have a little surface on my ball. I'd have where my ball would definitely have to read the middle part of the lane because it looks pretty decent. It looks pretty decent on the right on that lane 4. What is your opinion there on that?
Yeah, 100%. Your ball needs to find friction somewhere in the mid lane. And these topography charts showcase that there is not much what we call built-in friction. So built-in friction is really when we're referring to the topography. So at your local bowling center, if it's an older center, if the lanes weren't just installed a couple of years ago, there is already some built-in friction where that topography, where there's dips in the lane, where your ball hits it and it wants to hook. On those brand new panels, that is where what they have at the USBC Open Championships this year in Baton Rouge, or last year in Baton Rouge, there was really not much craziness in the topography in terms of like a lot of hook on those panels. So you need to find a way to make hook, and that's where surface comes in. That's where big asymmetrical bowling balls come in. So that's where that 500 grit ball that Matt Russo was throwing is going to give you some of that friction. It's going to cause your ball to start hooking no matter what.
And I love that analogy because one of the keys to bowling is you have to see your ball hook. You have to see your ball hook somewhere. Depending on the pattern, short pattern, you probably want your ball to roll as early as possible, right? And not do much down lane, so on and so forth, depending on the pattern. But what I would like to discuss is if you are bowling on a house pattern, right? A lot of times I see people go light, they go light, they go light. They're trying to play 10, right? And when I'm given a lesson, the first thing I say to them is move 10 to the right and get your eyes around 5. ball just takes off, right? I tried to explain that once you see where that friction is, you can now make your moves accordingly. So I want to talk a little bit about those moves. And Jay, I want your opinion. On a house shot, it's not necessarily you always have to, if you're missing the head pin right, you don't necessarily always have to move to the right. If it's the house pattern, okay, the majority of the time, yes. On a sport pattern, though, if you're not seeing your ball hook as you're moving right, it may be time to move in, depending on what that pattern is, whether it's long or whether it's short. What is your rule of thumb?
I don't know that there's necessarily a rule of thumb that I've held, but to your point, if you're right, if you're missing the pin to the right, a lot of times the common sense thing says is, well, move to the right and point more at it. That's kind of the common sense side. However, throughout the night, what's going to happen is those heads are going to dry up, right? And so sometimes the best move is to move left, keep your eyes in a similar spot, and open that angle up, and then again come back. Now I want to go back to topography for a second. As what Zach said, when you have a lane that has a valley, a known valley in the topography, it's going to work twofold, right? You have more friction from the lane surface, but when you have a valley like that, it's gravity that's causing the ball to hook in addition, right? So that depression in there is what's, again, making the ball hook along with that friction. So anyway, that's a pointed thing that you maybe didn't ask for, but
No, that's fine. No, any information is great. Now, I love the fact that we've talked a little bit about something that we don't see. And a lot of bowlers are new to the word topography. I mean, they know that the lane's not flat, but why isn't it flat? What makes this happen? Why is it there? And I think we covered that pretty well today. We will talk a little bit more about it, because what I think we need to do come Wednesday is talk a little bit about the start of the Open Championships and the Women's Championships. Let's talk about the two venues and talk about what we see as the difference between the low end, the middle, and the high end. Because if anybody has bowled in the Stadium and South Point, we all know that it plays like three different bowling centers, correct? I don't know if anybody's going to agree. Zach, what do you think? Do you think it plays like three different bowling centers?
Well, that's kind of the hard part. I've only been to the Open Championships 5 times, so I've only bowled in Reno once. South Point,
Okay.
I bowled in a couple of times, but ironically, I've been in the same kind of general space for every time
Okay.
I've been at South Point. So I might be learning a little more as well.
Okay. Jay, what about you?
I'm in the same Zach camp. Anything I say would be completely
Wait,
from I don't have enough
oh,
experience there to make that statement.
well, hold on. So I know I'm the oldest one here. Am I the only one that's bowled in these places for like 20 years? I mean, come on, guys. Help
And the
me out.
rest of us, come
Yeah, sorry.
on, come
Was,
You
on.
yeah,
commoners.
I think I hit the age limit 20 years ago
You
on that.
peasant. Hey,
You
I want to make, if I can, I just want to make a comment that makes our game so fun. And I think now that we're talking about topography and oil
Mhm.
conditions and ball shape and ball condition, that's what makes the sport so fun, right? It's a chess game.
Right.
You're fighting ghosts that you obviously
Yep.
you can't see what you're up against. And that's
Mhm.
what makes it so fun. And I think the average person needs to understand that a little more.
I love that idea. And be open-minded. We've talked about that a million times here. Make sure you stay open-minded. Make sure you collect all the information you possibly can before you go to a bowling center, because it's truly going to help you make the best choices possible. Thanks for joining us here again, The Daily Show, right here on the Bowlers Network, where we are truly trying to make bowling the most elite it can be. See everybody on Wednesday at 12 Central Time.